to use this facility for our indivisible Pittsfield. So Alex, would you stand up and take donations to Friends of the Berkshire Athenaeum are always welcome, and we really owe the Athenaeum a great debt of gratitude for letting us continue to meet here free of charge with our subversive activities. So, did you have a question?
I did. I actually had 2 questions. The first question I want to ask you is about the opioid crisis. So I had a close friend who passed away, and I was wondering what specifically you would do to sort of prevent that. I know with young people and college students my age, it's a really big problem, not just in the Berkshires, but just in the country in general. The other question I want to ask you is, how would you go about funding some of these new programs? You talked about universal health care. Like, what would be the difference between that and the healthcare system that we have now in the state? Thank you.
Yeah. What is your name?
Chris.
Chris, very sorry to hear about your friend. And it's not a unique experience across the state. Everywhere I go, I meet people who share stories about people they know who they've lost or who are suffering from addiction. I have a friend that just recently whose son is addicted and was in a place where he was wanting to get treatment and needed to get into a treatment facility, and it took 15 days for him to get into the facility. Fortunately, he was still in a place where he was wanting the treatment, but often that is too long and too late. And one of the big problems we have with the opioid epidemic in this state is we are not addressing the crisis, and it is a crisis, with the level of urgency that the crisis demands. We have a treatment system that isn't even close to being able to meet the demand for treatment. We are not doing nearly enough to be aggressive on the front end to try to educate people about the potential harms of taking opioids, to limit the supply of legally prescribed opioids, which are the large contributor to people who ultimately end up taking heroin. And this is an issue that I ended up learning a lot about when I was CEO of my health insurance company, because the number one health issue of the members I served in the Medicaid program was addiction, of any health issue. So we instituted all these different initiatives. We tried everything. We eliminated all prior authorization requirements to access to treatment, so it was really easy for our members to access the treatment they needed. We paid people to go out in the community and find our members who we knew were addicted, who we couldn't connect with, to try to engage them and get them engaged in their own treatment and recovery. We had like 21 different initiatives. The Boston Globe named my health insurance company one of 46 game-changing companies in any industry in the Commonwealth in 2016 because of our innovative work in addressing this issue. I would take the same approach as governor. We need to try new things. We need to invest in education and treatment resources that are going to be commensurate with the scope of the problem. And right now, we are not treating it nearly aggressively enough. In terms of paying for stuff, your second question, I support the fair share tax, the millionaire's tax that's going to be on the ballot next year, which will generate meaningful new revenue we desperately need for transportation and education. Some of the investments I was talking about in response to Katya's question. And we desperately need it. I think it's the fairest, most meaningful new revenue proposal we've had in a long time. It would generate about $2 billion a year that we desperately need. And we've got a tax structure right now in Massachusetts that's regressive. Those who make the least pay the highest percentage of their income in taxes, and those who make the most pay the lowest percentage. This would help rectify that a little bit for the 19,000 families who are making over $1 million a year. You mentioned as an example that I talked about we need to move to a single-payer healthcare system as something that would be more expensive. I actually am confident if we do it thoughtfully, we will save money overall by moving to a single-payer system. And I want to talk about this for a second, if it's okay. So as I mentioned, I've spent a lot of time in the healthcare industry. And as health insurance CEO, I was proud of some of what we did when it came to managing care and connecting people to the care they needed, our work on the opioid epidemic. Most of what we did was facilitate a bunch of useless transactions. And our healthcare system is way too complicated for people to navigate. It is way too expensive. It is not financially sustainable on the path we're on. And the quality of the care, honestly, is not as good as it should be. And there are a number of things we need to do to simplify the system, make it financially sustainable, make it work better for people. But one of the easiest things we can do from the perspective of cutting a lot of useless cost out of the system is go to a single payer system. And I believe, and I know the other two Democratic candidates for governor also support moving to single payer. One of them says we need to go now. That would be a mistake, in my view. We're talking about 20% of our economy. Single payer is a means. It's not an end in and of itself. You could do single payer in a way that doesn't get the outcomes that we're looking for, which is a simpler, cheaper, better system. We need to do it thoughtfully, as quickly as we can, but thoughtfully. And I believe I can best provide the leadership we need to get a single payer system in place that is going to achieve those outcomes we're looking for. I know the healthcare industry here. I know the people in the healthcare industry here. I actually believe we're in a moment in time with the right leadership that we can do this in Massachusetts. We've got a very progressive healthcare industry, very progressive leadership. We take a lot of pride in the fact we're the first state in the country, and the healthcare industry here does too, to get to near universal coverage through Massachusetts health reform. And businesses are sick of dealing with our healthcare system, which is way too expensive and an administrative nightmare. There are many doctors who today are saying, I'm sick of dealing with all the administrative nightmare I need to deal with all these different health insurance companies which pay me different amounts to do different things, and it's impossible to keep track of. Someone told me, I don't know whether it's true, that Toronto General Hospital has 5 billing people and Mass General has 240. I would not be surprised at all. And it is totally ridiculous. And I believe I'm best positioned to provide the leadership we need to get to a single payer system. And if we do it right, we will overall, in terms of our healthcare spending in this state, we should spend less and have more left to invest in some of the things we need to invest in, like more treatment for people who are addicted and for people who are mentally ill.
My name's Dave,
Hi, Dave.
and I want to know what your stance is on veterans. Across the nation, the federal levels of help have decreased,
Yep.
and we have homeless here in the state from Boston to here in Pittsfield. They're homeless. How will
Yep.
you, and how will you advise there?
Yeah, so we owe a huge debt of gratitude to veterans and their families. It is, in my view, the ultimate form of public service and sacrifice. And while not a veteran myself, I have a great level of appreciation for what veterans have done. We in Massachusetts can take a lot of pride in the fact that Massachusetts has the richest level of benefits at the state level for veterans than any other state in the country. And that was a priority under the Patrick administration. We actually, even during the recession, increased the level of benefits for veterans in a number of different ways while we were in office. I've actually proposed a number of different things that I think we need to do for veterans, which you can find on my website, which is on that card, and I would encourage you to go look at the entire proposal. One of the things I address is the very issue that you raised. We do have a number of veterans in our state who are homeless. And the truth is, it's not that complicated to address it. It just takes leadership that is deciding to do it and who is determined to make sure their team is working and doing the hard work to identify the homeless veterans across our state and to work with the different social service agencies and housing agencies to find permanent supported housing for them so they can stay successfully in a stable way in their home. And the city of Boston has taken this on, Mayor Walsh, and has, I think, eliminated homelessness among veterans in the city of Boston because he took this approach. We need to do the same kind of thing across the states. One of the many proposals I have on my website for veterans. She's not even prompting you anymore.
No,
Thank you.
you're learning.
Hi, my name is Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about what you talked about for early
So taking the second part first, I do support paid family and medical leave. This is an issue that's before the legislature right now. If the legislature doesn't act, it's teed up to be on the ballot in 2018, and I support moving in that direction. Someone who needs to take time off because they just had a child or had a sick relative shouldn't have to worry about not being able to pay rent or other household expenses to get by during that time period. So I do support it. There are a lot of Democrats who support paid family and medical leave. People aren't talking enough, I don't think, about child care and preschool. And if you think about it, it's not going to do a lot of good for a parent to be able to get 16 weeks paid leave off when they have a child and then have to quit their job because they can't afford child care. We need to think about this holistically. We are the most expensive state in the country when it comes to child care and preschool. It costs about $15,000 a year for each kid. Think about families that have 2 kids. Most families cannot afford it. And so what's happening is a lot of parents, one of the parents is choosing to leave their job because it doesn't make sense for them to keep their job and pay for child care, which isn't what they want to do often, and often isn't in the best interest of the child. The evidence is really clear about child care and preschool, particularly for lower income kids. If they get access to good quality child care and preschool, it is game changing for them in terms of their success in school and in life. This is the most formative period of a person's life. 90% of brain development happens before age 5, and it's the time we do the least. After I left the Patrick administration, Governor Patrick appointed me to be the chair of the State Board of Early Education and Care, which I served in for a year until Governor Baker graciously asked me to resign, which I graciously did. But I learned a lot about the issue while I was there and became convinced this is probably the thing we can do that can make the biggest difference for kids and families. And so it was the first proposal I made as a candidate, which you can find on my website, and I encourage you to go read the whole thing. But I have committed that by the end of my first term, every single child and family in this state will have access to affordable, high-quality child care and preschool.
I'm Linda from Dalton. I have a couple of questions. As an artist, I'd be interested in knowing your views on supporting the arts in Massachusetts and support for the Mass Cultural Council.
Yep.
In addition, in Pittsfield, Berkshire County area, we've been dealing with an issue that has been very divisive in our community, revolving around the deaccessioning of art from the Berkshire Museum. I wonder if you have any views on what's been happening and whether you'd be willing to share them with us.
Yeah. So I will be honest that all I know is there's been a dispute. And I haven't dug into it to form a personal opinion about it. In terms of the arts generally,
Can we count on you to delve into it further?
yes, I will. I will. And I would encourage you to send me, if there's anything in particular you think I should be looking at to inform me, or your own opinion about it, please email it to me. In terms of the arts generally, it is, I think, one of government's responsibilities to help support the arts. The arts need government support. It's one of those industries that is in our interest collectively and as a community. For the Berkshires, it's also a huge economic driver, and is as a part of any economic development plan that the state is partnering with the local communities on in the Berkshires, that obviously needs to be front and center. And how the state can best partner with the Berkshires to help drive and support and grow the arts industry and the tourism industry that's tied to it. When I was working with Governor Patrick, it was during the recession. We had to make lots of tough decisions. One of the things that I did with Governor Patrick's support, of course, was figure out a creative way to help further support the Mass Cultural Council. So we did it through, you're probably familiar with this, the Cultural Facilities Fund, which we funded through the capital budget, which made, for various reasons, was easier to do during that time than through the operating budget because of all the pressure during the recession. And we created this new program that was run through Mass Development, which basically provided millions of dollars of additional grants to arts institutions and cultural institutions across the state. So that's a demonstrated record of having done something creative to further support the arts during a very tough time. It is something that I'm committed to doing and I think is important, and you can count on us as if I'm your governor.